Well, the last time I brought this chair, I talked about a lot of shirtless men. But the chair is back because we need to talk. Just be ready for the fact that this video will go all over the place because I'm about to rant. I know the timing of this video might be a little bit strange. We just got the best finals in the history of worlds. Riot just released their ARAM update. We got a preseason with a bunch of changes, Arcane will probably get some trailers soon, and we got a teaser that Aatrox might be getting his big cinematic in early 2023. But none of these matter, because none of these are what people expect from Riot games, except for the cinematic. And all of it is based on one simple fact. It is something I wanted to talk about for a while now. League of Legends does not have any new content anymore. Now, I know what you may be thinking. What is this about? League of Legends is still amazing these days. Well, if you think that, great! You see, after being with this game for 11 years, I learned that League's player base is constantly cycling. When someone gets into the game for the first time, they are able to stick with League for years without taking a break. Then, usually after another game comes out, people take a break. And then after a few months, they come back to League of Legends. And then, usually after about 5 or 6 years, they quit permanently. I have seen this so many times at this point. Which means that while some people think that League is crap right now, others who recently joined the game think it is amazing. Or similarly, people who found a new drive to play the game think it is great. And so, League's player base is constantly cycling. Which means that how you feel never dictates how others feel about the game. I am very much aware of that. So today, I'm not here to preach doom. I'm not here to talk about how League sucks. I'm here to tell you that once you quit League of Legends, Riot is going to have a really hard time with getting you back on board. To be fair, it's still amazing that League can entertain people for years. But there is a point which everyone reaches eventually. It's when you realize, I have played every champion, I have tried all the troll builds, I have played ARAM, Earth and All for One, I have bought skins I like and skins I regret, I have seen it all. At that point, your average League of Legends player quits. And it seems like Riot doesn't care. Okay, maybe that feels a bit too dramatic. I feel like Riot is not doing enough to bring people back. Which is where we need to talk about what does bring people back. Is it balancing? I strongly doubt people care about balance unless you play for rank. Even if you play Vel'Koz and Riot buffs his damage by 5%, I doubt that's gonna be enough to make you play the game again. Is it skins? I know sometimes people have the urge to hop back into the game to see what a skin looks like in-game, but after Riot pumps out another 20 skins within 2 patches, that very quickly stops piquing people's interest. Funnily enough, when people do come back to League, it is mostly because of nostalgia. They see Arcane and they think back to the time they predicted a perfect blind Jinx ultimate. So they log in and they realize, yep, that's the same game I left months ago. Nothing changed. And that's what I believe has to change. Because for years, League has not changed. And I'm not talking about a new dragon or a new item or a new champion. When you return to League of Legends, you drop onto the same Summoner's Rift where you have always been. You're in the place where you go into a lane, you miss last hits and slowly chip away at the enemy until one side wins. This is what League of Legends has been about for over a decade, with no innovations. But now you may be thinking something else. You can't change the rules of a competitive game, you would be ruining what people love about it. And you'd be right. League of Legends is a competitive game. Once you start changing the rules, people who watch esports but don't play the game will stop understanding the game. So you can't really touch the competitiveness. But that's the thing, it's almost like Riot forgot that League of Legends can also be a casual game. Now don't get me wrong, with my whole heart I can tell you, League of Legends is not a casual game. For a proper casual game, you wanna get in, have some fun without being judged and get out. Hop in and hop out? Yeah, you can do that in League of Legends. Play without being judged? Yeah, that's not happening. No matter what you are doing in League of Legends, you are always being compared to someone else. But let's ignore that aspect of League of Legends. Let's just say that if you turn off chat and you only focus on having fun, you can play League casually. Even in this scenario, you are going to hit the same wall. Because Riot is awful at separating the competitive players from the casual players. And as a result, Riot never introduced any innovations into the game. Both sides have to play the exact same game with the exact same rules. And I don't understand why. If ranked players want to keep all their rules for their climb, why don't you just change League for the casual player base? Which arguably is the bigger player base. For example, let's be honest, some people have been sick and tired of Summoner's Rift. Green plane with a few rocks and a river. Yes, it serves the purpose of being relatively dull so that you can always see what's happening. But my god, after playing Summoner's Rift for 6 years, you know what is not gonna get me back into the game? Returning to the same place that has not changed since the beta. And I'm not talking about the change from 3 pixels to nanite power 3000 pixels. I just really wanna play League of Legends in another environment. We have Noxian arenas, Demacian plains, Piltover underground. But you know where we play instead? In the middle of nowhere, a place that has never even been confirmed to be a canon part of the universe. Now, if you don't want to reskin Summoner's Rift for ranked for the sake of clarity, why don't you do it in normals? Why don't we ever get new content? The majority of League's patches is balancing, which is great, but that's not new content. It doesn't change the game. Balancing is just different numbers that hardly count as something new to do in the game. When Riot adds in a new item, it gives you options in the item system, but it all boils down to different numbers. If we stay surface level, a new item is not too different from a balance change. You didn't change anything about how the game is being played. But you know, a couple of times a year we also get a new champion. Surely that's some good new content to play with. Yes, sure, I would argue a new champion is new content. That only up to 2 players can play at once. And which only really affects the people who like the role. And who fight for relevancy with the other 160 champions. I'll go for a reach, but adding in a new champion into League is like adding in a new character into Genshin without anything else. Just the character, no new bosses, no new quests, just that. Is it new content? Yeah, sure, but it doesn't add anything to the game. And in League's case, it doesn't add in anything new besides the other 160 champions. At this point, I genuinely don't know what's Riot's purpose with new champions these days. A new champion hardly makes anyone come back to the game anymore. In the past, a new champion absolutely did that. A new champion was always a massive hype moment. But after I have seen that 100 times, that moment was kinda dulled down. Also, there was a reason why Riot was adding in new champions. Most of the times, it was filling up a gap in the roles. Was supporting only about staying back without doing anything? Let's throw in a carry support. And how about a support that benefits from ganking lanes? Was jungling all about farming and ganking? Let's throw in a jungler that can enable fights between junglers. These days, the new champions never add any new value into the game. It feels like they simply exist for the sake of, hey, we need a new face. Also, new champions can sell skins. But yeah, if new champions don't drive players back into the game anymore, maybe Riot should be focusing more on something else. At least in 2021, the new champions had a great effect on the narrative. Even though the Ruination was the Ruination. From Viego to Gwen to Akshan to Vex, they followed a great overarching story, with the details being a bit hazy. So even if nobody liked them in-game, they would still bring great narrative into the world. In contrast, what would happen if we just deleted the last 5 champions from the game? No, really, I'm kinda curious. I think some people would be happy that Zeri is not dominating ranked games anymore, but then again, that's most of the competitive players. In reality, I don't think many people would be able to tell the difference. Instead of these champions, I think people would just pick other champions with a similar playstyle. I wonder how far back you could go deleting old champions before it would start to make noticeable impact on the game. But the reason why I'm mentioning this in the first place is because if you delete a champion from the game, and yet the game stays the same, doesn't that prove that a new champion is not new content in the context of the game? Which is strange to realize considering the fact that all the new content we are getting are new champions and skins. We never get anything else. So what we really need in League of Legends is a change of rules. Or at the very least, change the environment. Now, I understand what many of you may be thinking. Oh, he's just going wild, Riot can't do that. You know how much that would cost? What a headache that would be. Oh really, you wanna know what other games are doing? In Fortnite, they rework the entire map every season. It's a game with a competitive following similar in style to League, where players know certain places like the back of their hand. And still, the game is not afraid to completely rework those places. That's like arguing, well, we have to keep the river the same because people know where Baron is. In other games, when an expansion comes out, we get entire new worlds full of new models, animations and places. In the same time, you know what League got? 4 new champions and 148 skins. I'm serious, some people counted how many skins we got this year. But that's all we are getting. 148 skins, none of which give any value to the game itself. It's called skins for a reason. It gives a skin to something you already have. As harsh as it may be, a polished turd is still a turd. We don't need skins, we need more ways to play League of Legends. Which means that yes, the entire time I was heading towards the fact that I wanna talk about game modes. As I see it right now, Riot has 2 options to give League of Legends some novelty. Option number 1 would be to drastically change Summoner's Rift for normal games. If you're afraid of breaking everything, then sure, keep the same 3-lane system, but change everything else. I'm talking about brand new visuals. Maybe turn everything into a Noxian arena. Instead of bushes, give us traps and launch pads. Restructure the entire jungle. Give us 4 epic monsters instead of just Dragon and Baron. Maybe 1 monster spawns in the middle of a lane. Maybe Noxian beasts walk in instead of minions and they have their own abilities. Maybe tiny dragons walk into each lane and you have to dodge their fire. Would it be weird and wacky? Yes. But who cares? It's normal. And that's the mentality we need in normals. Who cares? Because until you get to that fun, ridiculous place, even in normals, people will still have their optimized plays. Because why wouldn't they use it? It's optimized, so it gives them the edge. But if you get wacky, who the hell knows what's the best strategy? Still, at the very least, all they could do is change the map visually. The crazy thing about this is, they already have some of the maps. If you consider ARAM as the most casual mode there is, shouldn't we be able to change ARAM without too many people caring either? Well, where's the Butcher's Bridge? All the models are done. Yes, you will have to convert them into the new engine. But is the player's happiness not worth the time? Speaking of which, why don't we reskin ARAM for every zone? I can guarantee you the players would love it. And remember the Volibear reveal? It was so small, but Volibear actually changed the game a little bit. Why don't we have more of that? So yeah, option 1 would be to reskin the main playing field so that we see something new. Option 2 would be what everyone really wants. New game modes. Everyone knows that I'm a strong advocate for PvE in League. When Star Guardian Invasion came out, I loved it. And then when Odyssey came in as an upgraded version of the Star Guardians, it was by far the best event League of Legends had ever seen. and all you did was fight NPCs, while occasionally fighting a bigger horde to get to the other side of the level. Also, you modified the abilities of your champions to a ridiculous level. For example, when Yasuo hit his tornado, the enemy would then shoot out a tornado of tornadoes, which started a chain reaction. I could sit here and talk for hours about how great Odyssey was, but the real benefit of this was? It was PvE. You weren't being compared against anyone. You just played with random people together. If someone was bad and they didn't really know what they were doing, a good player could always carry them. And you weren't mad at them for being bad because they weren't feeding anyone. It was a nice loop of positivity in League of Legends. And higher difficulties had to be unlocked, so you couldn't get a new player on your team for the harder challenges. This is new content. Odyssey took League of Legends, it gave it brand new environment, so you weren't just staring at Summoner's Rift again, and it gave it brand new rules and a brand new way to play the game. It was honestly wild that League of Legends could pull off something like this. And the reason why it flopped was because it was repetitive. There was not a lot of replayability. After you played the game with your abilities augmented the way you wanted, you kinda did it all, with higher difficulties only being higher numbers. Unfortunately, Riot released this game mode in 2018, only a few months before the rise of roguelikes. So what Riot didn't realize is that if they turned the augments into random upgrades, essentially turning it into a roguelike, which, you know, is a genre legendary for its replayability, this game mode could have been insane. And if they kept this game mode permanently, and they kept adding in new bosses and augments every couple of patches, they could have built a whole separate game inside League of Legends, kind of like what happened to TFT. But this one would be perfect for casual audience. Instead, the League of Legends team did what they often do. They dropped it immediately after it failed. There was no further iteration and no further effort to make it work. If something didn't perform well, scrap it, we'll start from the beginning. The biggest offender of this was Nexus Blitz. Riot was so close to a permanent casual game mode. But again, it didn't do well, so instead of fixing the flaws, just scrap it and make it all go to waste. Can you imagine if Nexus Blitz stuck around? We would have a game mode where Riot could try all the wacky stuff, and it wouldn't interfere with League of Legends itself. But alas, Nexus Blitz was Riot's last attempt at a big game mode. And now it's been over 2 years since the last game mode event. By which I mean an event with a dedicated map. I mean, sure, Ultimate Spellbook was really good. It had replayability and people loved it. But really? We're back on the Summoner's Rift again? Have you seen what other games do with their game modes? I haven't played Fortnite since Season 1, but my mind gets always blown away by their events. Be it an on-rail shooter or an escort mission with Dwayne Johnson. You watch what's happening over there, but League can't have a new map? That's why I believe I'm being fair with all this critique. For the size League is, in reality, we're getting very little content. When it comes to events, everyone is saying one thing. You call it a new event, we call it a shop update. That's what the new patch is, it is patching in new skins. And yes, the visual novel was nice the first time. The second time, after everyone figured out the dialogue options were fake, it was fine. The third time, people still knew the dialogue options were fake, and they didn't like the Star Guardian story. But sure, let's say all visual novels are amazing and people love them. We still progress through them by only playing League of Legends, which is the same experience I have had 1,000 times. The reason Spirit Blossom was awesome is because after going through the visual novel, instead of playing on Summoner's Rift, you hopped into Nexus Blitz, which had its own map. It was a brand new experience, which was now discontinued. With the Ruination, you jumped from a visual novel back into a shady Summoner's Rift. And with Star Guardians, back to the same Summoner's Rift. With shady UI, because they didn't change them from last time. Speaking of using what came last time, we also have the rotating game modes. So there, why are we only getting All for One and Earths? Earth coming back every time kinda confuses me. Didn't Riot say that Earth drives a lot of people back into the game, but it also increases burnout? So since Earth is up quite often, shouldn't we be worried? Is it plugging a hole that we should be aware of? You see, in this long rant where I've been really all over the place, I explained that League's events have been quite limiting when it comes to the gameplay of League of Legends. And if you return to League of Legends looking for a new experience, you're likely to turn around and go back to where you came from. And that's a really big deal with a totally different reason. Riot is great at spreading their IP around, from TV shows to other games to promotional events. And while the purpose of this is to make people pay attention to their new products, it also funnels attention back to League of Legends. And that's where everything kinda starts to crumble. Because all these people go straight back to the competitive grind fest. If only there was a game mode where smurfing would make the experience better. Again, League of Legends has not been designed for casual players for a while now, with probably the biggest pro-casual change being challenges. It is a nice progression system that works besides just ranked. But even this has a big flaw. It anchors the players back to what they already know. If you want to complete these fun challenges, guess what? You better go back to ARAM and Summoner's Rift, which we have played 1,000 times. At least ARAM got some new updates now, so I wanna see how that turns out. Now, of course, this entire time I have avoided one single topic. A big reason why we are probably not getting new game modes. You can't buy them and they don't sell skins. I mean, they could, but the game modes themselves don't. Fortnite might actually have some of the best events out there when it comes to live games. And still, people play them once and never again. But they still have these events because these short experiences, which only lose them money, actually make them money in the long term. Because people are more likely to stick around the game to see what's gonna come out next. It's the overall quality of the game that goes up with game modes, not the short-term earnings. So if you argue that Riot can't do game modes because game modes don't make money, that's false. You just don't see the money immediately, it ramps up over time. And if Riot actually thinks that, they need to get a new accountant or something. Then again, Riot is the one who argued that we should pay for achievements because the system was too expensive to develop. So maybe I'm just digging a hole here. But don't worry, that hole goes deeper still. Because you know, throughout 2022 I noticed something. You know how I was on Copium the entire year? It started with the Void event, only for us to not get anything, which led me to believe that Riot was working on something big. You know, they had enough time to make a big game mode with a new map. And the theme was Star Guardians! Only to get Ultimate Spellbook again. After this I started wondering, what was Riot working on? There are no new game modes anymore. 5 new champions, which is average. But VGUs went down to 1, that being Udyr in 2022. And in a new interview, it was revealed that Skarner is gonna come out towards the end of 2023. So both are 1 down from 3 on average. On top of this, there's the lore. And let me tell you, when it comes to my channel, this year was brutal. And I totally saved myself by leaning into the MMO. Because when it comes to the lore of 2022, there is no content either. When a new champion is released, of course there is their new lore that I can cover. That's usually their bio and a bit of a short story. But besides that, Riot also releases the color stories. These stories are usually not related to any specific events. They are just stories for the writers to have fun and expand the world. In 2021 we got 7. And 5 more at the end of the year, which were leading up to the big cinematic. But for the sake of accuracy, since we are only in November, let's just say that last year we got 7. In 2022, we got 2! And the last one was 5 months ago. How am I supposed to support an entire channel on that? I mean, sure, the Ruination book came out and it was amazing, but Anthony Reynolds worked on that last year too. These days, the lore only gets pushed forward by Legends of Runeterra. Is that Riot's goal? Do they want to make the game primarily focus on the lore? If not, what happened? Both in League's gameplay and the lore, everything died down. But coincidentally, you know what has not died down? Skins. We are still getting 6 or 7 skins and a prestige skin per patch. If anything, if it comes down to the money part, everything's fine. But here's the kicker, when it comes to skins, most of that is being outsourced. It's not Riot who is making most of those skins, it is freelancers and other studios. So what is Riot doing? I don't understand. It feels like either the League team feels grounded and they are afraid of doing anything crazy, or as Nicky Boy mentioned before, it seems like League of Legends might be understaffed. See, in the past we were getting new game modes and actual new content. Riot wasn't afraid if it was buggy or broken. As long as it wasn't crashing and it was playable, sure, let people have fun. Odyssey famously launched without going onto PBE, and during the first days the augments didn't even work. But no one cared and everyone had fun. And it even went down as one of the best game modes to be ever created. Perhaps when Odyssey launched it was a bit too early. 4 years ago people were still focused more on the competitive side, and so even casual players still went and played normal games instead. These days, as the players are a bit more relaxed around League of Legends, I wonder if Odyssey would have a bit more success. Anyway, this entire strange rant has one big point. It's a point that may scare some of you, but most people will understand. League of Legends needs Mordog. What Mordog is doing to TFT is incredible. And yes, I know there is more people working on TFT, but it is easier for me to target a single person. In general, TFT has been changing every half a year to make the game more interesting. They keep the rules the same, you save money to earn money and you buy new units. But every half a year they aesthetically swap everything around and they add in a new mechanic. And sometimes that temporary mechanic is so good it becomes permanent. Because the rules never change, even people who quit TFT and then come back can still play it with ease. And more importantly, this is how TFT makes their player come back with every set. With every set essentially playing as a whole new game with the same rules. And when it comes to the new mechanics, TFT is not afraid of going wild. The first set was normal. The second set introduced some elemental buffs that were randomized every game. The third set gave the entire game different rules every time you played. The fourth set had the chosen units. Set 5 had the cursed double-edged items. Set 6 added in augments that were so good they became permanent. Set 7 had dragons, which is the only feature that players really didn't like. And Set 8 iterated on that, and they turned dragons into the threat units. Can you imagine if League did that? Can you imagine if Nexus Blitz was a permanent game mode with different rules every season? What if in one season, after killing a monster, you tame it and send it to lane? And what if in the next season, when you die, your soul spawns as a bot fighting for the enemy, giving more punishment to death? And what if they just make Prob Hunt for one of the special events for League of Legends? You know, you turn into a jungle monster, you randomize jungle. That's the beauty of changing mechanics. If a mechanic doesn't work, scrap it, that's fine, work on something else. Many games do it, including Mythic Dungeons in WoW. And in fact, that's how TFT got where it is now. And that's not mentioning the fact that TFT gets 6 new environments every patch. League gets nothing. So, in conclusion, I don't know what's happening over at League, but it's scary to see everything slow down, while also not getting the events that people are asking for. I am one of the people who would like to play League, but I don't because I grinded the game for 8 years and I just can't get a new experience anymore. And all League is doing now is teasing events that never come out. We got a bunch of Void teasers the last time, and now the Darkin teasers are piling up. I can't wait to see Aatrox in the visual novel.